They told us stories, that if you're a chosen one, you'd know it, that you'd feel special, different, destined, that you'd be born under a certain star, gifted with talents so obvious that the world couldn't help but recognize them. They made it seem like being a chosen one was about being celebrated, about being seen, about being the hero everyone cheers for. But I'm here to tell you something that will shake the foundations of everything you've been led to believe. You've been lied to about the chosen one. This is the truth. The real chosen ones don't feel chosen. They feel forgotten, abandoned. They walk through life wondering why nothing feels right, why they don't belong anywhere, why they carry a weight they can't explain. They feel like strangers in their own homes, in their own bodies, on this planet. And that's because they were never meant to fit in. They were meant to remember who they were before the world told them who to be. But that remembering doesn't come with applause. It comes with pain. It comes with silence. It comes with a kind of internal war that no one else sees. The lie is seductive. It tells you that if you're chosen, things will get easier, that life will unfold for you in magical ways, that people will understand you. But the truth is, if you are truly chosen, life will break you first. It will strip you of everything false. It will take from you the identities you clung to, the relationships that kept you asleep, the comforts that numbed your potential. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because you can't carry the kind of light you were born to hold if you're still tied to the illusions of who you think you are. So let me ask you something. How many times have you felt like everything was being taken from you, and you didn't understand why? How often have you looked at the sky and asked, why me? Not from a place of pride, but from a place of exhaustion. That question isn't weakness. It's the beginning of awakening. The real chosen ones have been through hell. Not because they deserved it, but because they were being refined. They've been through betrayal, abandonment, loss, and isolation, not because they were cursed, but because their path required a different kind of fire. A fire that burns away everything fake. A fire that reveals what's eternal. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that spiritual awakening is beautiful, that it's peaceful, that it's gentle. But that's only half the truth. The other half, the part no one includes in the highlight reel, is that awakening is violent. It's disruptive. It tears your life apart. You're not handed enlightenment like a gift. You're dragged into it, kicking, screaming, questioning everything you ever believed about yourself and this world. Because how else could you be free? You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be authentic. The chosen ones are not the ones who look holy. They're the ones who are willing to go where others won't. Into the
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
shadows, into the wounds, into the parts of themselves the world told them to hide. They're the ones who sit with their pain long enough to hear what it's teaching, who stop running from discomfort and start listening to it, because that discomfort, that's the call, that's the invitation to the path. But here's what makes it even harder. No one tells you when you've been chosen. There's no angel that shows up and says, "You're one of us now." There is only life. Life pulling you away from what's easy. Life asking you to let go. Life forcing you to choose between who you were told to be and who you really are. And most people never choose. Most people stay asleep because waking up costs too much. It costs your comfort, your image, your old life. But if you're here, if you're still listening, then maybe, just maybe, you've already started choosing. Maybe you've already felt that pull. Maybe you've already lost things you thought you couldn't live without. Maybe your soul already knows. The truth is that the chosen ones don't choose the path. The path chooses them. And the moment it does, life is never the same again. You start seeing through things. You start feeling what others deny. You start noticing the masks people wear, even as you still wear your own. And eventually, you can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. That's when the real journey begins. The journey of becoming. You won't be handed a map. You won't be given clear instructions, but you will be given signs, moments of synchronicity, strange dreams, gut feelings you can't explain. And above all, you'll be given challenges, not to break you, but to shape you. Because every time you say yes to growth instead of comfort, you unlock more of your true power. Every time you choose truth over popularity, you awaken more of your mission. And that mission? It's not about being worshipped. It's about being real. It's about being someone who can hold light and shadow. Someone who can walk through fire and still choose love. So don't wait for someone to tell you you're chosen. Don't wait for a sign in the sky. The sign is you. The fact that you're still standing. The fact that you've survived what would have destroyed others. The fact that you feel so deeply, even when it hurts. That's the proof. That's the initiation. The chosen one isn't a fantasy. It's a responsibility, and not everyone wants it. But if you do, if you're ready to walk the path, not for glory, but for truth, then you have to ask yourself the one question that unlocks everything. Am I willing to lose who I was to become who I really am? Because that's the real cost, and the real miracle. If you knew how sacred your pain was, you would never again ask, why is this happening to me? You would ask, what is this trying to awaken in me? Because the truth is, nothing on your path has been random. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every rejection, each one was a doorway, a test, a sacred trial designed not to punish you but to prepare you. You were never being broken, you were being initiated. Because before a chosen one can remember who they are, the universe must see if they're ready to carry what that truth demands. You don't get to skip the trials. No one does. In fact, the more powerful your purpose, the more intense your preparation. That's what no one tells you. They'll show you the light, the wisdom, the clarity that comes after, but they won't show you the nights you lay awake, doubting your worth. They won't show you the days when everything you thought was real crumbled beneath your feet and left you with nothing but the sound of your own breath. But that silence, that nothingness, that's where the chosen ones are made. Because before you can carry divine insight, you must first be emptied of illusion. The hidden trials are brutal because they're invisible. No one sees the war you're fighting. You show up for work. You smile around your friends. You function. But inside, you're in the furnace. You're questioning everything. And what makes it harder is that the world around you doesn't validate your experience. There's no manual for spiritual death. No one gives you a certificate that says, "Congratulations, you're awakening." Instead, you feel like you're losing your mind, like you're falling apart, like you're the only one who feels this deeply, this lost, this wide awake in a world that's still asleep. But I need you to understand something essential. The intensity of your trials is directly proportionate to the magnitude of your calling. The universe doesn't waste storms on empty vessels. If you've been through the kind of darkness that no one else understands, it's because you are carrying a light that no one else can hold. And that light must be earned. Not in a performative way, not by being good or obedient or spiritual by society's standards, but by showing up again and again, even when you don't know how, even when you're exhausted, even when the old version of you is screaming to be resurrected. You show up, you breathe, you surrender, and then something happens. Slowly, quietly, you begin to remember, not all at once, but in fragments. A dream that feels like a message, a voice inside that's not fear but something deeper. A knowing that doesn't come from logic, but from the marrow of your bones. And it doesn't make your trials suddenly disappear, but it makes them make sense. You start to see the patterns, the lessons, the gifts hidden in the grief, and you realize the universe wasn't trying to destroy you, it was trying to reveal you. But here's the thing. The trials don't just test your strength, they test your integrity. Will you still choose truth when it costs you everything? Will you still choose love when it's not returned? Will you still walk your path when no one claps, when no one sees, when you feel completely alone? That's the real test. Because power without integrity is poison. And the chosen ones aren't here to play small games of ego. We're here to shift timelines, to disrupt systems, to awaken generations. And for that, we must be clean. Not perfect, but real. Transparent. Willing to be seen as we are, not as we wish to appear. So the universe strips us. It strips away the masks we didn't know we were wearing. It takes away the relationships that coddled our wounds. It ends the careers, the illusions, the distractions, so that what remains is unshakable. So that when we rise not as a product of the world, but as a force of remembrance within it. Have you ever wondered why it feels like people don't truly see you? Why you can be in a room full of people and still feel like a ghost? It's because you weren't meant to be seen until you remembered yourself. The trials hide you. They cloak you in confusion, in pain, in uncertainty until the false layers fall away. And when they do, when the remembering begins, something extraordinary happens. The universe starts responding to the real you, not the you that performed, not the you that survived, but the you that knows. And that's when the magic begins. But here's the paradox. By the time you reach that point, you're no longer chasing magic. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You're no longer searching for signs. Because the deepest truth has already anchored inside you. You are the sign. You are the message. You are the proof that it's possible to walk through fire and come out clearer, softer, stronger, not in spite of the pain, but because of it. So I'll ask you now, not as a guru, not as a creator, but as someone who's walked through this fire too, are you willing to trust the trials, even when they make no sense? Are you ready to see your breakdown not as the end, but as the sacred beginning of remembering who you really are? Because once you do, everything changes. Not because the world changes, but because you do. And when you change, the world has no choice but to respond. There's a silence that follows awakening. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of responsibility. A weight that enters your chest when you realize you can no longer unsee what you've seen. You can't go back to the life you had before. You can't rejoin the illusion, not really. You can't pretend you're powerless. Because once you know who you are, once you truly remember, you must carry that truth. And it doesn't feel like glory, it feels like gravity. We often romanticize awakening. We imagine bliss, freedom, alignment, and yes, those things come. But first what comes is burden, the sacred burden, the knowing that you've been entrusted with something bigger than yourself, a voice, a message, a vibration meant to move through you, not for your ego, but for the healing of others. And suddenly, you're not just living for yourself anymore. You're living as a bridge, between dimensions, between timelines, between what the world is and what it could be if only more people remembered. But here's the paradox. The more you awaken, the more alone you may feel, not because you are now unlike. You operate differently. You see through things most people still believe. You move from intuition instead of logic, from soul instead of fear. And that makes you a mystery, a disruption, sometimes even a threat. You'll lose people. Not because anything went wrong, but because your frequency no longer matches the rooms you used to shrink yourself to fit inside. And that's the cost. That's the burden. You don't get to stay hidden anymore. You don't get to play small. You don't get to pretend you didn't hear what your soul told you in the dark. Because once you awaken, your life is no longer just yours. You become a living message, not with your words, but with your being. People feel it. You walk into a room and something shifts, not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you've surrendered to what you carry. And that surrender, it changes everything. But don't mistake the burden for a punishment. It's a privilege, a sacred trust. The universe does not reveal these truths to those who are not ready. It doesn't hand this kind of awareness to just anyone. So when you feel the weight, when you feel the ache of carrying so much invisible truth, know this: it means you were chosen to hold it. You were chosen to embody it. And that means the universe believes in you in ways you don't even believe in yourself yet. Still, this path is not easy. There will be days when you want to forget, when the burden feels too heavy, when you wish you could just be normal again, but you can't. And deep down, you don't want to, because the price of forgetting is too high. It would mean betraying the very essence that brought you this far. And you've come too far. You've lost too much. You've grown through too much to abandon yourself now. So the real question becomes, how do we carry the sacred burden without letting it destroy us? And the answer is simple, but not easy. We carry it by sharing it, by speaking our truth, even when our voice trembles, by creating spaces where others can remember too, by letting our lives become medicine, not by being perfect, but by being transparent. We carry the burden by not carrying it alone. You'll find your people, the others, the ones who've also walked through fire. They won't look like you. They won't sound like you. But you'll know them by the way they listen, by the way they see you. No masks, no performance, just presence. These are your soul allies. And when you find them, something clicks. You realize you were never meant to save the world alone. You were meant to ignite others, to awaken the ones who would awaken the others. That's how the wave spreads. And still, the path remains narrow, because to carry the sacred burden, you must remain devoted not to a belief system, not to a guru, but to your own inner truth. And that truth will evolve. It will contradict itself. It will destroy your old beliefs and ask you to stand in the unknown. Again and again. That's the real mastery. Not certainty, not dogma, but the ability to stay open, to keep listening, to keep following the thread of aliveness, even when it leads you into chaos. This is what it means to be a chosen one. Not to be better, not to be above, but to be responsible for your energy, for your impact, for your alignment, and from that place, to live in such a way that your very existence becomes a transmission of permission. Permission for others to feel, to heal, to awaken, to remember. So I'll ask you again, not as someone who knows everything, but as someone who has carried this burden too. Are you willing to keep going, even when no one claps? Are you willing to hold the truth, even when it isolates you? Are you willing to let your life be the message, even when it costs you everything you thought you wanted? Because if you are, then I promise you this: the burden will become your blessing. The weight will become your wings. And the very thing that once felt like too much will become the reason others awaken. There is a moment on this path, quiet, subtle, but seismic, when you stop running from yourself. You stop apologizing for your depth, your intensity, your knowing. You stop trying to fit into places you've outgrown, trying to blend into worlds that were never designed to hold your truth. And in that moment, something ancient within you exhales, because you finally arrive not at a destination, but at yourself. Not the self you were taught to perform, but the self that has been waiting behind your eyes since the beginning. This is the final becoming, the moment when you no longer deny your power, but embody it. For so long, we're taught to be afraid of our greatness, not because it's dangerous, but because it's disruptive, because it doesn't play by the rules, because it challenges everything small and convenient. So we shrink. We dim. We pretend we don't know what we know. We make ourselves digestible, palatable, safe. And yet, the truth never leaves. It just waits. It waits for the moment when we are finally too tired to pretend. When the cost of hiding becomes heavier than the risk of being seen. And when we finally say yes to our own magnitude, something irreversible happens. A veil lifts. A power returns. Not the kind of power the world worships, not dominance, not control, but presence. That rare, unmistakable frequency that can only come from someone who has faced their own shadow and chosen to love themselves anyway. From someone who has walked through their own fire and come back with truth in their bones. This is the kind of power that doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to convince or perform. It simply is. And when you carry it, the world feels it even if it doesn't understand it. But here's the part no one talks about. Stepping into your power doesn't mean you feel powerful all the time. It means you stop betraying yourself when you don't. It means you stop outsourcing your value to people who never saw you. It means you stop waiting for permission to be who you already are. You begin to realize that power isn't about never feeling fear, it's about no longer allowing fear to decide your life. You still feel it, but you walk anyway. You speak anyway. You live anyway. And in doing so, you become dangerous. Not in the way the world fears, but in the way the system fears, because you can no longer be manipulated. You can no longer be controlled by shame, by guilt, by approval. You become sovereign. And from that place, you become a lighthouse. Not because you try to shine, but because you can't not. You've become too honest, too embodied, too awake to keep pretending. And when that happens, life begins to reorganize itself around you. People fall away. Opportunities shift. New timelines open. Not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned with who you really are. You become a match for the life that was always meant for you, but could only emerge once you stopped pretending to be someone else. You become a magnet not for everything, but for what's true. And here's what's wild. The more you own your power, the less you need to prove it. The quieter you become, the softer, the more compassionate. Because you're no longer defending yourself from the world, you're simply being yourself in it. Fully, unapologetically, unshakably. And that's when you realize this was never about becoming someone new. It was about remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. So I'll ask you one final time, not as a teacher, not as a guide, but as a mirror. What would happen if you stopped denying your own power? What would become possible if you stopped waiting for someone else to tell you you're ready? What might awaken in the world if you finally said yes to the truth that has always lived inside you? Because this is it. The edge. The invitation. You've been prepared. You've been tested. And now you've been called, not to be perfect, not to be above, but to be whole. To walk in this world as someone who remembers, someone who chooses, someone who embodies the truth that power is not something you chase, it's something you become. And when you do, the world changes. Not because you tried to change it, but because you finally stopped denying who you are.